everybody. Oh, I'm still hearing audio mixer. I don't know why that is. Oh, I know why. Hello, everybody. I'm Brian. This is Miss Berlin. This is Bill, our friend Bill. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Say hi, Bill.
Yay!
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, there we go. This is something we don't do a lot here in about the 9 years that we've been, almost
We're
10
picky.
that we've done BreakSec. We've only done a handful of sponsored interviews. So, um, fair warning for all of you who listen to our stream, listen to our podcast. Blumira paid for this. Okay. So, not to be crass, but, you know, um,
But
the
like,
check
but
cleared
like, are they
literally.
paying for? They're not paying for me to do it. They're paying for Bill to do it. I'm
Right.
just,
You're doing this out of the
I
kindness of your
am
hearts.
all
Hearts.
like for the
Hearts,
last
also?
6 years or
Okay.
however long it's been. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. And we're a better podcast for it, to be honest. So anyway, how you doing, Miss Berlin? It's been a minute.
Good. It's been a long month. It's been a
Okay.
long month, but I've gotten in the last 2 weeks I got to travel to 7 different states.
Oh my God.
And my youngest son got to go to space camp, which was really cool. Which was actually recommended by another person in InfoSec that I know.
Very
So
nice.
what I learned is actually there's like the actual space camp, which growing up in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, I thought was just something that happened like on TV. I didn't think like space
Right.
camp was a real thing, and it totally is. Because they had a B-sides there. That's how I found out there was a real space camp. And they actually have
Nice.
like a cyber camp, like above and beyond the space camp, which
Okay.
is real interesting. I don't know what they actually cover,
Yeah.
but it was really cool during like checking him in. So it's in Huntsville, Alabama, and checking my youngest in. We were like in this big, like long, sneaky line, and part of it, you walk past this like it's definitely not a data center. It cannot be the data center that runs the whole thing because there's like one switch, maybe a couple servers, and just a whole bunch of blinky lights. So it's just like patch panels and stuff.
Okay.
But it looks cool. Like it looks cool. It has like this
Right.
big clear glass. They're like, oh, like it looks really nice to. I'm sure the people that are paying for cyber camp.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now cyber camp is. I think they just put a satellite up into space that is going to be used for a CTF at one of the
Yeah.
at an upcoming
Yeah.
CTF. I don't know if it's Hacker Summer Camp up in Vegas.
It's so
They just
cool.
launched one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah.
They actually just had
Yeah.
what was it Hack Space Hack Space Con? Which mental health hackers had a village at, which was kind of cool.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in Florida.
Yeah, there it is. That's pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah, Johnson Space Center. Yeah.
Really
Or
cool.
Kennedy Space Center, KSC.
I wish I could
Yeah.
have gone. Like I've always wanted to go there
Very
and
nice.
see it, but
Very nice. Yeah, I would go there too. I think we went to Johnson when we were in Houston, and that was crazy just seeing a
yeah.
Saturn V rocket and everything.
Right.
So yeah, yeah. So I'm glad you're with me, Miss Berlin,
Me too.
because this interview is perfectly cromulent to your interests as well. This company named Blumira, which you probably know anything about. Yeah, we've got William or Bill Reyor. Is it Reyor?
You've got it right.
Okay,
We work
Reyor.
on the same team.
Right on.
We do.
What?
I
Yeah.
know.
I don't know what
It's
you're
the
talking about.
best.
No, that's not true. That doesn't happen. Yes, Miss Berlin does in fact work for Blumira. We've had Blumira as a sponsor before, and
With
congratulations
different
on y'all's.
marketing leaders. Like we
Right,
had two
right,
marketing leaders in a row decide that it was worth sponsoring. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And within the last the last month or so, y'all have a Series B round of funding. So y'all are, you know, like a fat kid on a Twix or something over there, with the fat loot,
Serious
Yeah.
business.
dollar bill,
In the
y'all.
last
Yeah,
in the last
exactly.
week, I think, is when we announced it.
Very nice.
We've been
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
been holding our tongues for almost several months, knowing that it was closing. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that's great. It just kind of goes to show you've got a product that people believe in. So that's pretty awesome. And so part of our discussion today is going to be with Bill and Ms. Berlin on talking about threats and threat detection and somehow how did that work and
Yeah.
current trends and processes.
Right.
And we have some links in our show notes, and I'll put some links up in the chat as we go along. And so, Bill, I want to introduce you officially to the show. Welcome, first time caller, long time watcher,
That's right.
or whatever.
Listener. But yes, yeah, for forever.
There
I've
you
been in the
go.
Slack. I've been a long time listener to the podcast, and I'm very happy to participate.
Cool. A prolific blogger, at least on the Blumira site, because I do mention the libSSH write-up that you've got
That's
here
right.
that we'll probably talk about at some point in the near future, near 30 minutes.
And
But
go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, not
No.
just prolific blogger, but before Bill even started working again for Blumira, we started working. He's the actual third author for the Defensive Security Handbook now.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Wow.
True story.
Yeah. So we've been
Nice.
like,
I have no free time, is really what that means.
You know what? I
Cranking
don't
it
have any
out.
free time either. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, between moving, doing my Harvard class, making sure I have a stream up, and working a 40-ish hour a week job.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's good times.
Gotta have hobbies.
But anyway, yeah, gotta have hobbies. So we're here to talk about Blumira. So if anybody has questions in any of the chats, Miss Berlin's monitoring the YouTube one.
Yep.
I'm kind of watching the LinkedIn chat window, and the Twitch one is up, of course. So, Bill, tell us, as we do with most interviews, tell us a bit about yourself. How'd you get into InfoSec? Why do you like threat detection? Why did you decide to go that route in your career?
That's a great question. So, I grew up sort of like an angsty teen with anxiety. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I spent most of my time on computers on IRC in the late 90s. And so, the first time you talk smack on IRC, you get punted off. And a lot of people, I think they have like this reaction like it's a scary thing. That wasn't my reaction at all. I wanted to know like how this happened. Like show me what you did to make my connection disconnect. And that was like back in the days of like OOB and port 139 and like WinNuke. So like basically back in the late 90s. And then ever since then, basically I was hooked. So I knew that I was going to get into system engineering even back then, going through high school. And basically, I've just tried to chart a path to get closer and closer to an information security role. So for me, doing threat detection is like the best of both worlds, right? Because like you get that, like you get to scratch that itch of like understanding how the trick works, how the exploit works, how the vulnerability works, and you get to provide insight and guide people who really need to know how to fix that problem. And so like you're not just like getting your jollies off like trying to figure out how the thing works, but you're actually taking that and doing something incredibly useful, right? Because like there's companies left and right that are getting ransomware. And so if I can take a little bit of knowledge and apply it to an organization that may not have the time or the resources to figure that all out, all the better. I feel like I'm using my knowledge for good.
And not just one organization either. Like I think it's different when you work, because you've worked for really big companies, Bill. Like working for one big company is different because they have one sort of, I mean, they have one infrastructure, or they have like a known quantity of things that are being attacked, and then there is like the broader picture of how many people can I help at once, in a different role. So I love both sides.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with Blumira. Blumira was a company that was born of trying to help the little guy. So I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. They have huge budgets. They have mind trusts of people that are there to fight those cyber problems. But when you look at smaller mom and pop shops, SMB, and even some mid-sized businesses, They just don't have, um, you know, the knowledge in house always to be able to like make these things happen, to provide that same level of security. So that's really what hooked me on joining Blumira. Initially, it's basically like, okay, like here's a need, like how can I take this knowledge and productize it and basically apply it, and provide it in a way where it's actually affordable, right? Because like we've all seen that Splunk price tag, and not everyone has $1 million budget. So
Right.
um, that was that was one of the biggest things that attracted me to Blumera.
Very cool. Okay. Um, so we do have some prepared questions, but we are taking questions from all of our chat, like I said. Yeah, so one of the things that we've been touting here when we mention Blumira on the show here is that the SIM and the XDR take minutes to set up and install, and it's fairly simple. Miss Berlin has mentioned more than once that it's easy to set up. It just takes minutes. Um, Obviously, when you're baking a cake, you have to have the ingredients, you have to have your mise en place. Without the necessary tools, you're not going to set this up in minutes. So, for somebody who's maybe on the fence about an XDR or doesn't understand what an XDR is, um, tell us what an XDR is from Blumira's definition, and what are some of the prerequisites that you need to set it up in minutes. If you don't have these things already, what do you need to have bare minimum to set up Blumira as an XDR?
That's a great question. So that was a multi-parter. So I'll start at the beginning of
Yes.
like what is. I may go off script here because I'm not exactly sure what Blumira's exact definition of an XDR is, but
It's
I'll provide
whatever
my
we say it
explanation.
is.
Right, right. There's a lot of vendor stuff and mixed definitions about different acronyms around like SIM and SOAR and XDR. And I guess the easiest way to put it is XDR is just, it's sort of like a fusion between all three things. So you've got a SIM, which is like your log aggregation, your detection platform. You've got a SOAR capability, which is like having a playbook of what's going to happen when a detection fires from the SIM. So if you merge those two things and you create sort of a fusion, you've got this concept around XDR where you just have this natural progression where you can take something like, okay, I've seen indicators that there may be ransomware, and we have this predefined action like isolate that host automatically, right? And so in its simplest form, that's basically what it is. It's a fusion of those SIM and SOAR concepts to provide an outcome that you want automatically, if that makes any sense at all. And
Okay.
it's primarily right now it's around containment, but it's going to grow in capability beyond that as well.
Right. And SOAR in this case is security orchestration, automation, and response.
That is right. Yep.
Yeah. So like
Cool.
I went to RSA this year. And one of the things I wanted to do and actually didn't get to, like I want to say 90% of the vendors either had something about XDR or securing APIs. There's what, like probably 2,000 vendors at RSA. It's only my second year, but it's just just vendor fest, right?
Right.
It's a very large amount of people spending crazy marketing budgets trying to get you. I'm sure a large amount of them have really, really good products, but I really, really wanted to go around to each of them and see what their salespeople said that the XDR meant to them.
Mm.
Right? Because so far, like
Right.
it's very nebulous. It's very, and we struggled with that too, right? Like trying to, like, there were several months where we were just going back and forth, like, well, what does XDR actually mean? Like, there's open XDR, there's
Right.
XDR, like, if you are a Fortune 100 company that sells security services and products and whatever, it's different depending on who you are, and because we focus on mostly SMBs, it's XDR is different in SMB space than it is in enterprise space.
Right. Well, okay, let's talk about that. Why is it so different in a small to medium business versus a large enterprise? Because I mean, obviously, you would argue that small medium business has little to no security, or they don't have a dedicated security team or a dedicated IT team. They outsource that to third parties. They they have a limited budget to do these things. So obviously, you know, one is going to either I stay open and I pay my employees, and I'm living on a shoestring, or I buy a top tier XDR, and I I'm now bankrupt in a week. So what's the difference there? Why is it different for enterprises versus SMB?
So I can chime in a little bit, having worked a little bit with more the Fortune 500s. So I think when you're in the realm of enterprise, you're not always looking for things like automated host containment for certain actions that happen. You're looking more for indicator enrichment and workflows that are elaborate that notify like the right amount of people. But when you're a small team, you can get away with Slack notifications, email notifications, you know, things like pager duty, text messaging for notifying that things are happening. And I think the other thing that larger enterprises like to do with these SOAR and these XDR fusion type platforms is they like to enrich what's going on to try and gain as much information as possible. So that might include things like pulling asset information from their asset database like into the alert, so whoever their SOC is has more knowledge around like, okay, who is this specific person who has this asset that's doing this thing, where in a smaller SMB or a mid-sized business, the people handling the alerts are probably they tend to be the system administrators that are responsible for the systems to begin with. So they know the naming convention and how to get in contact with people. So those types of features are a little bit less important to smaller businesses. Really what they're looking for is like, okay, like beyond just budget constrained, they're time constrained as well, because they don't have the same amount of bench. So they have to be very wise about how they choose to spend their time. And a lot of times that may be like, okay, well, we're going to put our trust in this organization like Blumira, that if they say they have a high fidelity alert and that I should contain this, that I'm going to trust it. And, we're going to contain it first, and then we're going to go and investigate it after. Where an enterprise, they may not have that same level of appetite for even automated containment. They're like, well, if we do that, and you're wrong, you could potentially shut down our factory, and that's true. But if your factory gets ransomware, that also is probably going to be problematic. So it's always a trade-off.
Right. So do you treat SMBs and startups differently? I'm not, I don't mean that in a negative manner, but a startup is a small business. But an SMB model for businesses, I'm thinking more mom and pop, brick and mortar kind of stores. So do versus the uber technological, everything's in the cloud. We're in Silicon Valley because, we're trying to get our Series B funding as well, kind of organization.
I think they have different technology stacks. I don't know what you think, Bill, but like I've seen startups be, if you're on a shoestring budget, like even though Macs are expensive, they're cheap from a long-term perspective as far as security goes and ease of like implementation goes. But so many SMBs are on like Microsoft Small Business Server, and they're still running an Exchange on-prem.
Oh, yeah.
And they may have like a handful of licenses in 365, or they're running on Google Cloud or whatever, and it's just like a completely different technology stack from somebody that's a startup.
Yeah, I think
they're not running E5. They're not running Amazon Azure E5
Right.
or licensing or anything like that. Okay.
No, they're trying to get by
Mm-hmm.
spending the least amount of money they can, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they try and focus on, you know, what makes their business profitable. And so where they get into trouble, and this isn't all SMBs, um, but many get in trouble when they don't have the basics down. So when they don't have complete patch management, when they don't have some sort of vulnerability management program, and when they haven't invested in strong authentication, so things like 2FA. These things that, you know, we know that, like, okay, someone's going to attack your Exchange server. We've seen it happen. We've seen customers get ransomware because of that. We know that phishing happens. It's a thing. It's, you know, it's been around for 15 years. We know one of the top ways to prevent that from turning into something much bigger is by having two-factor authentication everywhere.
You know what's crazy is
Right.
like it's the same thing in non SMBs. If you just think of, I had a conversation with somebody that just found out what I did the other day, right? Like had no contacts at all in cybersecurity, and like they're like, oh well, what do I do to protect myself? It's the same questions. Like most of the time, the like the consumer or end user or whatever, just like non SMB, it's the same answers to what do I do to protect myself.
Yeah, I
It's
think
just
there's some mysticism that a lot of organizations
right.
think that it's this insurmountable thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's not. It's just a handful of things they have to do really well, and one of those things is patching, and the other thing is vulnerability management. And you know,
Right.
those are things that you can do internally. There are also things that you can outsource, and go to a trusted third party provider. But I think, like, where I've seen organizations have like these three or four things solidly in place, we don't read about them in the news, at least
Right.
not as often. Like, I mean, you know, Capital One, like that was sort of an insider threat thing, and you know they had great security otherwise, but you know bad things happen. But most SMBs, most mid-sized businesses, they're not going to run into that.
Right. So is it so the enterprises are worried about things like Fancy Bear. The small and medium businesses are worried more about insider threat or people who, I mean, are they, or is it ransomware, or is it, you know, are there certain threats that the enterprise gets hit with that the SMBs don't? And you know, not to add on to the, you know, the questions here, but it's like, what are some of the vulnerabilities that you're seeing? Is it just generally not patching at all, or using
Sometimes,
older
yeah,
tech, or what does it look like?
yeah. So
So many on-prem Exchange vulnerabilities.
yeah, yeah. I think
Well,
yeah, basically it's just um, where we've seen customers really get in trouble. It really has to do with either phishing or just not great patch management practices. Um,
right.
but we can. So in previous lives, I was incident response um, at two major Fortune 500s, and I worked incidents in both of those companies. And those incidents typically spun up for the exact same reasons. So I feel like there's probably a Verizon data breach investigation report slide that would like highlight these things as like the top one or two or three things, and they don't change that much. I mean, you know, the people who are interested in monetizing the mistakes that we make as IT practitioners, you know, they rotate in and out, but by and large, like the mistakes are pretty similar. And you know, if you're looking at a different vertical, if you're looking at OT, if you're looking at you know, Internet of Things, if you're looking at uh, organizations that are primarily cloud based, they just have a different set of basic things that they need to do. Um, And I think, you know, once you figure out what those things are and you get really, really good at them, then you're in a far better place. But um, where we've seen customers get in the most trouble is where they just ignore the basics.
And I
Okay.
also I've had this conversation with different um different teams and different like levels of people or whatever, And it doesn't necessarily matter how large of a company you are or how large of a team you are. It is your maturity level as far as how far you are into an information security like program, right? I've seen Fortune 50 companies that have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Like they have like very, very low communication. They have a lot of like outsourced or just temporary employees that are in there trying to like piece together the security program, and may have a SIM or an endpoint agent or like 20 other platforms of security stuff that they don't really know why they're paying for them or what they're doing with them. Like
Yeah.
it
Right.
drives me crazy. Like you like multi-billion-dollar company, and you have all these brilliant people. They just can't talk to each other and know what they need to do for like you still only have multi-factor rolled out to 20% of your employees. It's
Right.
it's still the same issues. Like it doesn't matter how large of a company you are. It's still the basics.
Yeah. And the bigger you are, you have different reasons for failing, I would say.
Yeah,
So
right.
the bigger you are, you have like almost like you need like an organizational psychologist to like figure out like, okay, why are we so siloed? Why, you know, what's going on where these two teams can't communicate? Why can't SecOps communicate to infrastructure? Why can't the product team communicate to the DevOps team? Like the things that are going on, why is there a backlog of tickets that seems to be growing by the day rather than like diminishing by the day? Um, and so like breaking down these barriers kind of takes like some real psychology work and stepping out and
Right.
kind of checking pride, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
so I worked in EDU for a little while, and that was probably the biggest lesson I learned, right? Because when it comes to academics, academic freedom trumps all. So, like telling a professor that they need to use 2FA, if they don't want to, they're just going to tell you no. But if you frame that in a way that um, that person understands, like by doing this, I'm protecting my payroll information so that my paycheck doesn't get redirected to somewhere other than my bank account. Like then people are more apt to understand and agree to some of these controls when they understand, especially how it benefits them.
Right.
Right. No, that's a good point. And having, I know a little bit about working for a Fortune 50 company.
A couple of
I
them.
tend not to advertise where I work at for that, but it's been my experience that a lot of it is power based. If you start breaking those silos down, those people lose their sandbox, their little wading pool of power has a hole in it, and it's like, oh great, now somebody else is getting in my pool, or something like that. Um, yeah, so I completely understand, and the silo thing happens everywhere,
Yeah.
and it really takes people inside the company to reach out and want to collaborate or want to reach across those barriers and break those silos down. And to your point, it would actually help them in the long run because they get better visibility into issues. They can collaborate. They don't have to expend energy doing the same thing that the other team is doing to finish their issues. You're not reinventing the wheel. You can consolidate effort, and it would be nice if more companies figured that out a lot sooner. But I've been in many organizations where they have three different teams doing the exact same thing because that's just the way we do things around here. So, yeah.
Right.
And it does stymie the alert or the security issues there. So because you have three different teams doing three different things, in three different ways. So yeah, or three of the same things in different ways. But yeah, anyway.
Right. Well,
Um,
I think are we out of time almost? I kind of want to ask the one
no,
question. Keep
yeah,
going. Okay.
keep going.
So the question I really, really like that we have in the show notes is, so if I'm trying to get into threat detection engineering, what skills should I hone to get into the field?
Ooh, that's a great question. For me, like I view threat detections as like a Rube Goldberg machine. Like I want to understand how it all works. Like I want to play mousetrap. So like kind of a roll up your sleeves and like go figure it out thing kind of person. So for me, I think having like building a foundation where you really understand how infrastructure works, how to roll out Active Directory, how Linux works like fairly deeply, and then building some competence around like uh, an actual programming language like Python are like these are like core things that are really going to help you because once you have these things established around like cloud networking operating systems, um, then when you're looking at like, okay, how does this vulnerability work? You understand how the entire stack already functions, and then you can almost intimately figure out like, okay, like how does this work? And I
Right.
think Miss Berlin may have
Right.
lost audio.
I think, she's working on it.
Okay,
We'll get her back.
all right.
It's okay. Um, so that's great. So I think the reason I added this because I took out a question that we weren't going to answer or ask because of time issues, but I'm more than willing to go a little longer because we talked about Space Camp beforehand, so it's all good. We were derailed by my co-host who was I'm just kidding.
I don't know what you're talking
So
about.
But yeah, I mean,
no, so my thought was we've got a lot of people who are trying to break into information security. There's so many different ways of getting into information security, whether it be data, and from different backgrounds. We've got
yeah,
data analytics, we've got people who want to be SOC analysts or what have you. And what I was trying to figure out was there's no one good way of getting in, but if it's
oh,
attention to detail, or I can take this PCAP file and go, I can see these things or whatever. But ideally, what it would be great to be able to say, you know, here's 5, 6 different things you can look at if you're trying to get into threat detection. Hey, it helps if you've come from a SOC background, but it's not necessary. It's good to know how things work, like like your libssh write up that we're going to talk about in a second. It's like being able to analyze these things in a methodical manner and going through and going step by step by step and breaking down the issue.
yeah,
Being a problem solver, being curious, not like, oh, you must have a CEH or you must have a CISP or you
yeah,
must have a, GOFAIC
that's right.
plus plus or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's been my experience that you can you can have all the certifications and the degree, but the friction to finding a position wherever you want in information security is the friction is really reduced if you have a network of people who are already in. And one of the
Uh,
best ways to build a network in information security is to go volunteer at a conference like a B-Sides, right? Because then you're going to be working with people who are sort of already in. I've been running B-Sides Connecticut for, oh gosh, over 10 years now. And when I started, I wasn't even in information security. I was like doing network admin stuff for ESPN. So it really does help build that network and build those contacts for you know when you are ready, because that's the difficult thing, right? When you don't know anyone, how do you basically the only way that organizations are able to vet you is by your certifications or your degrees, and um,
right,
that's something that a lot of people are going after. So one way that you can sort of like stand out is by building those relationships ahead of time.
right. Yep. Yeah, my Harvard class is on power and influence for positive change, and yeah, networking is a huge thing. Relational power, not so much a positional power, but relational and personal power is what you're. If you can show, you know, blog posts, for instance, and we're about to talk about that. It's like build up a body of work. We started the podcast for that reason. It's like, look, I need to be able to get a better job, and it's like it hasn't happened to me yet, but it could happen to you. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I mean, you've got to show your value. If you're trying to move, careers or what have you. So, all right. So I wanna go through a couple things. So we're gonna combine question number 2 and question number 5. So, what tools and techniques do you most frequently use in your role as a detection engineer? How do they aid your work? And you, Bill, just wrote, just being June 8th, wrote an article about the libSSH vulnerability. So, um, I read through the blog post. It's posted in our chat and a couple of links in YouTube and what have you. But what made you investigate libSSH? And if it was required for work, then that's fine. I understand. But
No,
I mean,
so
what does your workflow look like for something like this?
so something like an authentication bypass in SSH just sort of like jumps off the page, um, right? Because if there's a major vulnerability in SSH that allows someone to bypass that authentication, that's a whole lot of things that are suddenly going to get owned, right? So part of my want for writing that post was to demystify, what the real impact of this was, and the other part was to offer some actual guidance, even though there was sort of like kind of a half-released proof of concept at the time where the source code wasn't out there, but there was a real researcher who had like provided like video proof, like, yeah, this really exists. I've made this work. It's slow, but yeah, no, I can bypass authentication on libSSH this way. So this specific vulnerability was interesting because, if you can bypass authentication on SSH, then you can potentially get a foothold into a customer environment, right?
Right.
What makes this a little confusing is that OpenSSH and libSSH, not the same thing at all. So
Exactly.
the two things, so libSSH is embedded in certain products, and it's a little difficult to discern and pick out what's where it might be. So the thinking was, let's try and provide some tools or process to identify this, and some guidance for customers to like, okay, if you're concerned about this, this is what you need to be looking at from a detection standpoint, right? So if you have open exposed SSH, right, and in that blog post, essentially the guidance is, look for public SSH connections into inbound hosts in your environment, right? Because that's one of the things that we will detect and alert on. And it's not fancy. It's just basically like, okay, like it's some fairly simple logic, but you really don't want to have these things exposed, especially if you don't know about them.
Right.
Now, Florian Roth has gone and built a more crafted detection. So he runs the Sigma HQ, the Sigma rule base of detections, and basically what Florian and his team have come up with is essentially, there's a specific error message that's logged when someone tries to exploit this vulnerability, and it has to do with the cipher. What is it? I think it's like ED. Oh, it's gonna escape me. I'm gonna have to explain it after. Yeah, but essentially, he's looking for a specific string and string output, and that may or may not be in varlog messages. So that's something that we need to dig into more to craft that specific detection. The problem with libSSH in general is that it's this thing that's built into a lot of IoT devices, right? And a lot of those devices aren't even sending logs. So that's sort of the concerning thing, is like, if this turns into a thing, if it's impactful, it's probably going to be like your Internet of Things devices that are going to get owned, right? Because those are the things that are forgotten about. I mean, I've worked incidents with WannaCry. You wouldn't believe the amount of things that are running Windows, and Linux is far worse. So like, we found printers that were running Windows. We found like conference room intercom systems that were running Windows that were infected with WannaCry. And so like something like this, I'm not saying it's WannaCry. I'm not saying it's
poster should be sending you logs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, anything that has like a Linux base that's sort of like embedded could potentially have this. So that's why like we recommend scanning your environment, see if you can find it. if you see an old version of libSSH, either, consider taking the device offline or upgrading it if you can. And that's
Okay.
basically the general guidance. And this is less impactful, definitely, than like the Move It vulnerability that made the news. What was it, 2 weeks ago? But
Right.
this is one of those things where like this should probably be on your patch radar.
Hmm. So, when you're creating threat detections, not just because of the blog post for libSSH and what have you, but what does that look like for y'all? I mean, what makes you decide to do a detection for this bug and not this bug? I'm from what I've talked with Miss Berlin, you have like a stack of like backlog stuff that you're working diligently through, but sometimes it's harder than others to get. And I think it was the Ed 25519
You got it.
handle that you're looking for. Yeah.
There's only
Um,
400 things in our backlog right now. It's not that much.
only.
Defensive security
Only.
is super easy. When we get done with those 400, we'll have solved it all.
Okay.
We'll have 400 more for
You
sure.
know what?
Because that's how this works.
So yeah.
For those
So
400,
obviously
we'll
you're
turn into
doing some
800. That's how it works.
right. Well, obviously you're doing some kind of triage, whichever ones are the most critical. The 3.0 CVSSs are not getting hit. It's the 9s and 10s that are getting done, or
Yeah.
the ones that are new hotness on the screen, or the stuff that has a POC and it's being used in the wild or what have
Yeah.
you.
So
I'm guessing.
So we also have we also build specific to customer requests as well. So basically, we go on. We try and adopt agile practices internally as best we can, and basically operate on a sprint basis. So depending on what sprint it is, we may be focused on emerging threats. If there's, say, some known gap that we want to address, we might address that in one sprint. Say for maybe something around like coursed authentication or something like that. But then we'll pivot to the next sprint to focus solely on customer requests and refinements for what customers want to see as well, because we're not just writing the detection logic, we're also creating essentially an incident playbook for every single detection.
Right.
And depending on the customer, they may want to see different things, and they may want to get a fork of a rule that's customized specific to them in the way they operate. So
Okay.
it's always a game of balance, I would say, and trying to like
Right.
do what's right at the current point in time.
Okay. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, so I've got a couple more minutes left. I've got a couple questions. The website for Blumira says you're supporting open standards or something. So are you are you pulling in? Are you sending out like Yara rules? I mean, what is the open format that you're using to send these out? Because I'm thinking, well, if I don't use Blumira, can I still benefit from using Blumira's technology, or the detections or what have you? Is there some way that can I still get help with threat detection if I don't have the Blumira product right now?
So I'd say when it comes to the detections, a lot of our blog posts will cover like the insight and why we do certain things. Um, but there's certain things that are just kind of difficult to solve on your own. Things like how do you detect different kinds of curb roasting attacks? So we've actually gone ahead and published certain Python scripts and PowerShell scripts that like assist customers, whether they're a customer or not, with like, okay, like one way that you can do this without like creating like a statistical baseline, we know, is to create some honey tokens or honey like canary accounts. And how do you do
Oh,
that securely? So we basically like published a blog article, and I know Amanda has done a, a bunch more that are just not on the tip of my tongue at the moment.
It's one of my favorite things about working here because it's not all about the money grab, right? It's not like we have to charge you $1 million for this license, da 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 da. Like, we're not actually helping fix anything that you can't pay for, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
really love helping the people that either can't afford, like, coming from when I worked in an ISP or like healthcare setting, like, there are a lot of people out there that don't have the budget that are looking for free resources, and it's kind of like that, like, pay it back thing. Like, I would love to give people that are looking for something specific or want like just a little bit of a leg up, like something to work with. And that's one of my favorite things, because whether it's marketing or technical leadership or whatever, they're like, yeah, like, that's great. Like, will it help our customers? Yes. Will it also help
Right.
other people? Yes. So, like, just give it out there. Like, Bill wrote the initial Kerber roasting honey pot, like, honey account thing. We added AS rep roasting to that. We added another one out there that does, oh gosh, what was it? Sysvol enumeration. So, like, if you're scanning, it's like honey files that are just like normally save credentials in Active Directory. So it's just like all of this stuff that can be out there. That, I mean, there's a bunch of other companies that do that too, but it's all of us combined that you just like add all of this stuff out there that just overall helps everyone.
Yeah, I'd say that's actually
Very
like one
cool.
of the surprising things that a lot of people may not realize is like um, we actually have kind of some open communication between like some of our competitors.
Yeah.
Like I follow like John Hammond at Huntress. I think he's amazing, and I think he does great work. And I think by like not paying attention to like people who are putting stuff out there, like you do yourself a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just like core values wise, like we
Yeah.
believe in like um, contributing back.
Yeah, those are the best companies. Like, we're gonna do a shared webinar with TrustedSec. Technically, they're a competitor,
Oh, nice.
right? BDS.
Oh, Binary
Yeah,
Defense.
BDS
Yeah,
Yeah.
is a
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
competitor of ours. They don't care. They're like, yeah, you want to teach more people about like Sysmon and what you can do to completely for it. Like, those are the companies that I like to pay attention to,
Yeah.
because they're like, let's help everybody. We don't care about all of this capitalistic stuff.
But
Right
so
on.
like even a more basic thing that companies really struggle with is like, okay, what kind of logs do you like need that you want to send to your sim? So we created
Right.
this thing called Logmira, and by we I mean Amanda. Um, and basically it's just a set of group policy templates that select the right audit logs that you need to like detect the things.
Yep.
And so that's public on our GitHub as well.
Which started from who's the guy that works with the other Brian? Oh my gosh, why can I not remember his name? They had another BDS podcast on IR.
Oh, Michael
Michael
Goff.
Goff.
Michael Goff. The malware
He has a
archaeology
malware
stuff.
archaeology
Yeah.
site that
Right.
lists um what you need to turn on in group policy and Linux and all this kind of stuff for logging. He just had like these huge lists, which was great. People use it all the time. I was just tired of doing all of it.
Right.
So if you can have a
There you
template
go.
and just import it, like, that's way better. So
Very cool. Yeah. So I guess the last thing I want to ask is I've put a ton of links in LinkedIn
no, me
chat
too.
and in Twitch chat. I've just been spamming the hell out of these things. There's also a demo there. Your YouTube channel had a Blumira demo from February of this year from a couple of folks.
Yep.
Include the Logmira stuff on GitHub, malware archaeology, and a couple of other sites. The Kerberos detection stuff you mentioned as well. Is Blumira an agent-based solution or is it agentless? And the reason I'm asking this is I know that a lot of companies are like, we have too many freaking agents running on our systems, and um, for some that may be a turnoff, but for, you could install Blumira and then get rid of something else, or something like, I mean, there's the trade-off there. It's like, okay, if you install Blumira, you can uninstall your Splunk, you could uninstall blah or whatever. There's a handful of things you could uninstall if you had the Blumira one. So, what's that?
You don't need Splunk anymore. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right. That's
so it's both. So we have an agent. It does useful things though. Like it can take actions. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Lima Charlie.
Go for it. Oh yeah.
Okay.
You
So
don't hide it.
yeah. So the Blumira agent it's Lima Charlie. So it does amazingly useful things. So Lima Charlie is like this EDR agent that we've partnered with them, and essentially it can do everything from containment to artifact collection in the case of incidents, to PCAP, examine it. It's really great technology. So we recommend it to our customers. We haven't seen resource constraints. We haven't seen spiked CPUs or memory issues or anything like that. But you don't need to do it. I mean, you can still roll with Sysmon and NXLog and still get detection parity that way too. We just, those are read only, and so we can't do automated host containment or other XDR actions if we don't have an agent on an endpoint.
Right. Because I mean, Sysmon
Okay.
and NXLog are free, but they're
Right.
still limited, right? And you have two
Right.
agents compared to one with Lima Charlie, and
Yeah. It makes sense if you're a small medium business, you don't have an E5 license. So how are you going to get those logs?
Right.
So you're going to need to put something on your system to be able to collect logs that will then feed into your SIM, SOAR, what have you, and integrations with your Exchange or your what have you, your different systems to pull all that together. Cool. So any last thoughts before I let y'all go?
no.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Nothing, Mr. Bill? Okay. Oh no, Mr. Bill.
Never heard that
yeah,
before.
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
My bad. Sorry. Yeah, no.
Depending on your name, there's
Anyway.
always the
Right. So if people are interested, if you're on the fence, you're looking for something, budgets are coming up soon, end of year, fiscal year budgets are coming up soon. If you are a smaller medium business or a startup, give Blumira a call. You can go to blumira.com/break.
Technically, don't even have to give us a call. We have a free version.
Yeah, you can just sign up and do it.
You don't have to talk to a salesperson.
Shut
which is my favorite
Is it?
thing. As
Yeah, the free version's pretty good, and the only thing that's different about the free version, which is some of the paid tiers, is log retention length.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, once you've collected the logs and done your analysis, you don't really need to keep the logs, do you?
For compliance, you might.
Compliance.
Right. Okay. Right.
Probably, but
okay. I mean, with some jiggery pokery, you could take and
you could
put those logs somewhere and then put those logs somewhere else.
Sure.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
There's always ways.
Sorry, salespeople at Blumira. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
If you're clever enough to do that,
okay.
all more power to you.
There you go. There you go.
But we do like it.
Cool. All right. All right. So I'm going to give people 10 seconds on the Slack or on the Twitch chat or something to ask a question. And then we will we'll end the show. So I'm giving everybody 10 seconds because I'm talking here and vamping. So Beta Wolf, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Are y'all hiring?
We are looking, I think, still for a senior full stack developer.
Oh, I can do that. I'm good. I know all the Golangs and
that's
the
all we need.
That's
all we need.
So
you're hired.
I can get commit and everything, so I'm good. Beta Wolf says favorite type of pie. I'm assuming the pastry
Here,
pie, like hand
I
pies
want to
or
say um,
hedgehog
lemon
pie,
meringue.
Lemon meringue.
lemon meringue. Okay.
Uh, I don't know. Is cheesecake a pie or a cake?
That's a cake. It's in the name.
Look, I was just trying to have a nice
I
podcast
know. I'm gonna
here,
ruin it.
and you,
This is what
dear
happens
God,
when
man.
Amanda invites me places. It's got to be apple pie then, I guess.
Right on. There is a hedgehog pie. Yeah.
Is there
Okay.
really?
Um, it's not a no, it's not a Final Fantasy wiki. It's actually there's a food called I thought there was a hedgehog pie
I
food
don't
or
want to
something.
eat
Yeah.
that.
Anyway, cool. All right.
Sounds
Well, so Bill, you are on the internet.
I am.
If people wanted to talk to you about threat detections or threat intelligence or what have you, how would they find you?
I think I'm on Twitter, and my handle is Blumira Bill.
You changed it.
I know. Well, I mean,
Blumira Bill.
you know what it was? It was like, I'm like, well, I know I'm gonna be talking about Blumira things, so let's just make it.
There you go.
Easy to get to.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean,
Right on. All right, and Miss Berlin, of course. How would people find you if they wanted to talk about threat
I still
detections
am
or what
on
have you?
Twitter, even though I hate it. At InfoSister,
Okay,
CIR, and
right on.
Slack and Discord and Mastodon and LinkedIn and all of those things.
Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, we're on Slack and Discord here at BreakSec. If you want to join us, you can go to discord.gg/BreakSec. And we have a threat detection and a threat intelligence channel there. I think I just call it threat hunting and intel because unlike on the Slack, I called it thrunting for a while, but people didn't seem to like that.
I don't like it. I know people like it. I know people like the word thrunting when they do threat hunting. I think it's weird. I think it's weird, and it sounds too sexual for me to talk about it in a professional setting.
Okay. Maybe we call it intel hunting or something like that, or threaten intels or something.
Nope.
I don't know. I just tend to put like some bits in there, like, oh, here's here's some POCs or whatever from Twitter. I kind of copy paste stuff in there.
I like so we have an internal channel called Death Watch, and Death stands for something. It's like detection, engineering, and threat hunting. So I like Death. I like that. I like that better than thrunting is Death.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like you should be on the wall, on the with the black watch or whatever. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. Check us out at BreakSec on Twitter, at Brian Break on Twitter as well. Mr. Betcher, of course, is at Brian Betcher Pwned on Twitter. BreakingSecurity.com. The podcast will be out in the next few days here, and you can check out our VOD on Twitch, on YouTube, or on LinkedIn because we just posted this up on LinkedIn. So that was it for Breaking Down Security and our first of 2 Blumira podcasts. We'll probably have the second one in July sometime. But Bill, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
Do another. We'll do another
who's doing the other one. I think Matt. Maybe.
Oh, Matt's awesome.
We'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, you'll like Matt.
Okay.
Matt's our CTO.
Very nice.
No, he's a genius.
I know.
Is he behind you, telling you you're gonna get? Is he off?
No. Hey,
we're hoping if he watches this, maybe both of us will get a raise.
He's legitimately one of the smartest people I've ever met.
Seriously, great guy, just like super smart. Great, has been
he's like my buddy that I can nerd out with about all the large language model like AI stuff that I keep kicking the talk. Oh yeah.
Right on. Oh, is Blumira planning on being at Hacker Summer Camp in Vegas?
We'll be there.
Bill will probably be there.
I'll probably be there.
We will not be there in official capacity, but we will probably hand out stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Very cool. I'm looking for my hedgehog stickers and/or shirt. So.
Heck yeah.
Both.
And one of our marketing director is probably going to be a goon at DEF CON. So.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for coming. Miss Berlin, of course, it's always a pleasure having you, join us here. So yeah, it's good.
Of
So
course.
yeah, that was it for breaking down security this week. Take care with yourself. Be kind to one another, and do what you can to take care of yourselves because as we're fond of saying here, you're the only you have. And we'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye.